Hi, this is Devos, the creator of Adgo Middle Management, and welcome back to Module 5, Decision Part 2. We're getting closer to the end of the course, and I honor your determination and commitment to your success. Having an open mind, being engaged and motivated is a giant step forward in turning your career and life around. The most challenging mission is to put these strategies into practice. Learning is great, but you get results by doing. You have to be very honest with yourself. Are you really implementing the strategies? None of the topics is theoretical for the sake of intellectual knowledge. These are practical and proven strategies taken straight from the trenches. They are not best practices. They are next practices. Most people don't practice them, and that's why they're stuck. Take advantage and develop your bleeding edge competitive advantage. Well, enough motivation for today. Let's continue on with the fifth decision strategy, contrarian. Contrarian means having an opposing popular opinion or going against current practice. A contrarian person takes a different position or attitude from other people and rejects the majority opinion. The most dangerous situation when making decisions is agreement. When the meeting room is too quiet and there is not much confrontation between supporters and objectors, you are in a danger zone. Without opposition, the chances are higher that some of the downsides, fallbacks, and risks of the decision are not being carefully considered. I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't like opposition. I want to move forward quickly and make decisions swiftly. Many years ago, I received a call from a board member that told me that I hadn't been facing enough opposition, so he offered to play the contrarian. And so he did. He made my life much more difficult. But you know what? After a few years, I learned that the contrarian strategy saved the company and me many costly mistakes. Since then, I have overcome my natural resistance to opposition and have begun asking for contrarians, and at times even play the part of contrarian myself. In the investment industry, contrarians are known for taking positions against the trend, and they are perceived as risk takers. In the context of decision making, the contrarian strategy does exactly the opposite. It mitigates risk. There are three contrarian scenarios. The first scenario is when you have natural contrarians. One or more people already object the direction that a decision proposes. Contrarians are subconsciously tagged in your reptilian brain as enemies. So instinctively, you begin to fight them instead of encourage them and listening carefully to what they're saying. Natural contrarians offer the secret sauce to the recipe that can convert a very bad decision into a good decision. So the next time you're facing an opposition and natural contrarians are emerging, open the door, invite them in. Encourage them to speak out rather than shush them like I used to do. The contrarian is good for the company and for you. The second scenario is the artificial contrarian. If you don't have an opposition to your proposal, then you need an artificial contrarian. Think of it as similar to walking alone in a dangerous place. You want a bodyguard, the contrarian. Don't cheat yourself by nominating a weak contrarian. You need a strong, powerful, analytical, and smart contrarian to help you and others begin to think of what could go wrong. The key success factor to the artificial contrarian is to keep it confidential. If people know that you nominated the contrarian, they may feel that it is a game or may even feel manipulated. So this is not manipulation. The goal is the good of the company, and you need somebody to start steering up disagreements. In any organization, there are concurrent positions like the audit functions, the auditors. The problem is that post-mortem concurrents don't add any value to decisions. Too many people speak out when things go south. Where were they when the decision was originally made? You can also approach a contrarian from a different angle. You can ask a natural contrarian or artificial contrarian to beta test a decision before you present it to a wider forum. Use the contrarian abilities to look at the problem from any angle you might have otherwise missed. The third scenario is the self-contrarian. You will be involved in decisions managed by other people in which you will identify the same danger zone of wide agreement without disputes. So take the opportunity to play the contrarian role for others, even if you haven't been asked. Add value to decisions by looking at the risks or play the devil's advocate. Try the contrarian strategy and discover the outcomes for improving decisions. The sixth decision strategy is empowerment. As a manager, you probably make dozens of decisions every day without even being aware of it. As I climbed the corporate ladder, I expected to make fewer decisions, and those few would be very important ones. Well, the truth is, I made more decisions, and not all of them were that important. My team members could have resolved many of the decisions. Decisions, they were life vests that allow them to float up. You have to replace the life vests with diving weight belts so that they will sink down. How many of the decisions that you make every day could be made by the people you manage? Well, it is hard to answer because it is a very subjective question. If you're a control freak, you want to make all the decisions, right? But the more diving weight belts replace the life vests, the better the quality of the decisions and the more time you have to look at the overall execution of the decisions. This is the power of empowerment. Empowerment means authorizing or delegating the power of decision making to the lowest level possible that have access to the relevant information or process. Empowerment means that the responsibility and accountability is in the hands of the person that has immediate access or knowledge about the situation without escalating it up the corporate ladder. It works beautifully in small companies. When these companies grow, mistakes happen and new procedures are created to avoid similar mistakes in the future. Management involvement increases in order to improve decisions, but the end result is bureaucracy. If you work for a small company, you are probably in good shape. The following empowerment strategies are more relevant to the big, fat companies with many layers of managers that are paid to make decisions that could be made by people that are closer to the event. The first empowerment strategy is authorize. The goal is to authorize the lowest level possible to make decisions. Easier said than done. I know. If you dump decisions on lower levels, you will quickly find out that these decisions were life vests and they float up. Successful empowerment depends on establishing an empowerment culture. The lower the rank of the decision making, the stronger the backup these people will need to get so that they can make decisions. This also means that you must enable them to make mistakes. Here's an example to clarify the authorization strategy. Imagine that your customer service team is authorized to give up to a 10% discount to specific customers or in specific situations. This is the standard operating procedure. A customer calls and asks for a 15% discount because he or she has gotten a competing offer. The SOP, standard operating procedure, limits the discount to only 10%. If the officers reject the discount, the company loses the customer, but the employee will be safe because he has made the decision based on the SOP. Empowerment enables the customer service officer to make a judgment call. How would you react as the manager of this employee if he approved a 15% discount? If you choose to reprimand the employee, you disable empowerment, and every decision that doesn't fit within the SOP will continue to be run by you. If you think he made a mistake, you can praise the judgment call and share your different opinion as a lesson for the next decision. Empowerment is still there. A culture of empowerment means that your team members are able to make decisions and are not afraid of the consequences of those decisions. Mistakes, even pricey ones, are lessons well learned. The second empowerment strategy is to facilitate decisions. This strategy is the facilitation of independent decisions by your team members. Coach your team to make the judgment calls that fit the company's as well as your own mission, culture, values, and strategies. Too many managers spend too much time teaching SOPs to their staff and much less time mentoring, coaching, and training employees to make decisions in ambiguity. The natural tendency of almost every organization is to escalate decisions in ambiguity to more senior managers. You can empower decision making in ambiguity if you brief, mentor, and coach others in 3 situations. The first situation is how to act when the SOPs are not completely clear or the situation doesn't fall exactly within the specific SOP. The second situation is when the SOP doesn't cover a situation that requires a decision. The third situation requires a decision that is in opposition to SOP. And this is the toughest situation because you actually empower employees to make decisions outside of the SOPs. The overarching strategy for all of these situations is the ability to make judgment calls that make sense based on the good of the customer and the company. The most inspiring empowerments can fade away in the first big screw up. For example, a few years back, a security breach happened in the midst of an empowerment project. The company reacted in a way that reversed the empowerment back to square one. It took a few years to reach the same level of empowerment. So don't let one-time event, as tough as it may be, affect empowerment. The third empowerment strategy is to default. You probably have faced the challenge of receiving an email asking for your response in the form of a decision. One of the ways to reach decision is to respond by default with non-response as an approval. Decision default saves time but creates also new problems. You can get across these problems by letting people know in advance that this is the way you operate. However, use your own judgment about whether and how to use the default strategy. So to summarize empowerment, the authorize, facilitate, and default strategies are about creating the right culture that empowers decision making in the lowest level possible. The seventh decision strategy is dynamics. Every decision is not a one-time event that you are archiving right after. Decisions drive actions, projects, investments, campaigns, customer engagement, and almost everything that happens in the organization. You can file a decision only after it is executed completely, and you have learned about the quality of this decision from the execution. However, decisions that drive long-term projects continue to live throughout the execution stage, and you must revisit the decision, the assumption, and the plan so that you can revise the decision based on the reality of the execution. So this is the dynamics of decisions. Too many people hang on to their original decisions far too long, and when they revisit the decision, it is too late and things are out of control. Stay on top of your decisions using the following dynamic strategies. The first dynamic strategy is rollover. When your team, business unit, or the entire organization is finally committed to a decision, instead of closing the process, roll the decision over until it is completely executed. Rollover means that the decision-making process is extended until the complete execution of the decision. Start treating decisions like customer support tickets, which are open until the issue is resolved. Have the same approach to decisions. You keep decisions open and visible until they are executed, and only then you do close them. Customer support tickets create a knowledge base that is utilized internally by the organization and externally by customers. And you can do the same for decisions. Decision knowledge base can accelerate decisions in the future. You can roll over a decision by uploading it to a shared platform and revisit it on a daily or weekly basis until it is closed. The second dynamic process is roll back to the dialogue strategy when the decision has to be amended. Amending a decision is not necessarily a failure in the decision-making process. It is a necessity to update the decision based on changes in circumstances, market conditions, technology changes, personal changes, and more. The most painful failures are when people neglect the necessity to amend decisions and continue to execute decisions while the circumstances change. It will most likely lead to failure. Decision rollback is more challenging in Asia because it might be perceived as losing face. In a decision rollback, you continue the dialogue until you reach commitment for the amended decision. Then record your amendment and either replace the decision or create a new decision. The idea is similar to stock trading. When you buy stock, you open a position that you review daily, or if you're a day trader, you review it every hour as long as it is open. Sometimes you make amendments. You buy more, you sell more. However, you relentlessly track the position until you close the position. It is the same with decisions. You never let it go until you close your decision's position. The third dynamic process is the roll out. When you roll over and roll back decisions, you may also change the decision rights. A common mistake of managers is that they don't address the need to change the stakeholders and the decision rights during the decision life cycle. Every time you make amendments, roll out the decision to the decision right holders, relevant stakeholders, and even the whole organization. Roll over, roll back, and roll out are the three dynamics that will help you make smart decisions. As you can see, this is not rocket science. These simple processes can make a big difference in your leadership. The eighth and final decision strategy is commitment. Commitment is the goal of the combined effort of dialogues and decisions. People don't commit to dialogues. They commit to actions. Decision is the process that records the commitment. Commitment is the key to successful execution. No commitment, no execution. Without the full commitment of all the people that are required to implement a decision will never be successfully executed. For many years, the organizational structure provided a safe harbor for execution based on the power of authority. Too many people fall prey to commitments that are given without intentions to implement. The safe harbor is a fake harbor. You need new strategies to lead in the new business world. Too many projects fail because the participants are not invested emotionally, intellectually, mentally, physically, socially, and spiritually in the decision. You may feel that you get commitments, while in reality, you are merely running a project with a disengaged group. The outcomes can vary from small screw-ups to total large-scale disasters. The first commitment strategy is to identify and overcome conflict of interest. The most naive assumption you can make is that your team members share the same interest in mind for the good of the company. Imagine that your key person in a business process is in the final closing of her employment contract with a competitor. You don't know this mentally, emotionally, and intellectually. She is not with you. She is not committed. Soon she will not even be with you physically. But you don't know this yet because she didn't resign and she behaves as usual. So this is one type of conflict of interest. You have to assume that everybody has to some extent a conflict of interest. Even doctors may forget the Hippocratic oath and recommend surgery for a problem that can be resolved without an operation just because they need it for their promotion, for money, for fame, you name it. Would you trust a medical doctor that has other motives rather than your own well-being? Well, I wouldn't. It is not easy to identify a conflict of interest, but if you stay alert to nuances and ask the right questions, you may discover conflicts of interest. Most conflicts of interest are embedded in different function loyalties within the organization. However, there is one conflict of interest that you can find and resolve. It is your hidden interest. Do not be ignorant of your own interests. They can interfere with your ability to be an excellent contributor. Be honest with yourself. We all have our own interests, and many times they may not be completely in line with what we are involved in at work or outside of work. Once you are aware and able to identify some of the conflict of interest, you will know how to get commitments. The second commitment strategy is commitment consensus. A successful decision is one that gets full commitment from all the people who will participate in the execution directly and indirectly. Therefore, it is crucial to reach commitment consensus. In a foundation video, I advise you to set a thematic goal that will unite multiple teams around the same short-term goal. It is easier to get commitments that are covered by a thematic goal. The first step to reach consensus is the technique you learn in the dialogue module. Ask proactively, one by one, for understanding. Make sure you answer all questions. The second step is to proactively ask one by one for commitment. Handle objections again if you haven't received commitments from everyone involved. If you're still having one or two missing commitments, address them by using the persuasion and influence strategies you learned in the previous module. If you still face objections and you haven't identified the reasons, they may reflect on conflict of interest. The third step is to ask objectors to disagree and commit. Do it in the forum of all the supporters in order to build some social pressure. Most times, the majority will help you to achieve disagree and commit. The fourth step is to disseminate the decision and commitments to the participants, to the relevant business units, and even to the whole organization. Public announcement reinforces commitment. The third commitment strategy is leading opposition. Leading opposition means that you give the objectors leading positions in the execution or even allow them to lead the whole project. It seems like a very risky decision, right? Why in the world would you give the opposition a leading position? It is counterintuitive. You want to ensure that they don't run away from accountability later on. What can be more effective in keeping them accountable than leading the execution? Well, it is difficult, it is risky, but the outcome will justify the risk. However, execution is the topic of our next and last module, action. So let's wrap up the decision module. We have covered mindset, novelty, decision team, decision process, contrarian, empowerment, dynamics, and commitment. And I hope this will serve you in making excellent decisions. So please submit your comments and questions below, and I will see you on the next module, action, next week. And until then, believe in your purpose, conceive your accomplishments, achieve your highest potential, and live a meaningful, fulfilling, abundant, healthy, and love-filled life.